Hello everyone, and welcome back to Imperator Rome. I'm Lord Forend, this time with a guide of Heraclea Pontica. Probably said that wrong, I do apologize, but here we go. So this is actually one of the more unique countries in the game. It's a tiny two-province nation on the borders of the Black Sea. You start off with the last of the Persian dynasty prior to Alexander's conquest. She's basically the last of her dynasty, your ruler. And you have a choice at the very start of the game to stay with your local heritage, your local culture, Mariandian, I guess. Or you can go to Persian and switch to Zoroastrian and try to recreate Persia from her, for which there is an achievement. If you do stay with the original one, you do get a bonus to integrated culture happiness, but you get a very annoying penalty to unintegrated. But if you do switch to Persian, you get a bonus to unintegrated culture group, and you get assimilation speed. Plus, you unlock the Persian traditions, which are very good. I think they're actually better than the Greek traditions, but that's debatable. So, I'm going to quickly deal with this mission here, this hospitable sea. The reason is, if you go Persian, you can't take this. So basically, if you do this, you can potentially expand along the Black Coast. You can buy land, you can conquer people, and you can potentially get more feudatories, and basically start to dominate the Black Sea, which of course is a very good choice if you want to stay here. You can even get stuff like getting rid of pirates or recruiting pirates and stuff. This is kind of cool because it gives you a cheaper maintenance of pirate fleets, which is, I don't know if any other country gets this. It's quite useful if you can get to it. You have to hold all at least 3 private havens around this area. But we're going to go talk more about the Persian one. Now, the inhospitable sea, you get reduced aggressive expansion and popularity gain. It should, if I go forward today, abort this mission. There we go. And it will give you the standard default conquered area. The area it's going to want you to conquer is right around your starting region. The tricky part is actually surviving as this nation and expanding. They do have a unique heritage, citizens, and cheaper found cities. The found city is actually very useful because it will allow you to play slightly taller than you normally would early on, because you can build more cities. The citizen happiness is very nice. The loyalty gain is a bit of a pain once you start using legions, but you're not going to have legions for some time. So, starting ideas here, probably morale, probably hospitium here, improve relations maximum, very strong on this nation. The strategy here is to basically go pure diplomatic and money at the start before starting to expand, and taking monthly corruption. Now, some people will attempt to conquer stuff, and while it is a viable option, it's tricky. So this nation right here belongs to the Antigonids, which obviously you can't fight early on. They do collapse at some point, but then this country usually flips to Thrace. If you're lucky, it gets independent and you can conquer it, but it still has more population than you do, which means you'll need allies. It tends to get a couple allies relatively easily. On this side, you've got these two nations here. I'm not going to even try pronouncing the names. They almost, in all my test runs and the series I was starting, they all ally each other. They both ally each other, which means attacking them is almost impossible because you start in a defensive league with 2 nations here. Although, and I will point this out, it's very weird that both of these nations seem to be able to be attacked without calling you to defend. But if you're having trouble, leave the defensive league and try and find an ally. The best allies early game I've found are nations over here. These guys, Pontus and Cappadocia. They tend to, however, all fight each other, and if you ally these guys, they're going to break the alliance in a couple months when they do the same starting mission you do, the matter of this area. But eventually, the one nation will be ascendant if you improve relations, and you can usually get them as an alliance. But I'm going to not deal too much with that. This is going to be less a step-to-step guide and more of a conceptual one. So in terms of innovations, you have basically two options. There's no point in going military early on because you can't fight anybody with the limited pops you have anyway. And there's really no point in going straight down the conversion tree here, even if it is super useful, just because you're not going to have a ton of pops to convert early on, and you'll have to do this later once you start to expand. So it's really up to you if you want to do it now, but I find the much better choice is to either start Oratory and race towards every improved relation modifier one you can get. You can get some pretty crazy boost. I think you can get 70 at minimum here, and then plus 33. Basically, you can get 100 and some odd % for improved relations. It basically means so long as you're not expanding, and so long as they're not literally about to destroy you, you can make friends, or at least not enemies, of every nation around you. The reason I recommend this, although you don't need to fully start this, is because the real trick I found to expanding is to ally a successor. The best successor I found for this is surprisingly Egypt. If you get really lucky, the Seleucids and Egypt conquer this area and in fact get into this area a bit as well. If you're really lucky, Thrace doesn't get all of this, and this area just relatively becomes independent or divided between the Seleucids, the Antigonids, Egypt, and any emerging nations. At which point you'll usually be in range to either get great improved relations with the Seleucids or Egypt. The reason Egypt is better than the Seleucids is because the Seleucids will count as a great power after their conquests, usually, so you won't be able to ally them, but Egypt will not get enough land to become a great power in the initial conquests. They basically would have to take all of this, plus some more land, to become a great power, whereas the Seleucids only need 150, of which, if they get half of this, you can't ally them. Thrace is also another viable option, but you kind of want Thrace's land. It's good land, and more importantly, gives you access to the Greek area. Macedon is really easy to topple in the most recent patch, and it prevents you having to mess with the successors. So that is why I might recommend going Improved Relations. You can get all the way down here with 8 of them, but it's your choice. The other option is to do civics and go down the trade side, the commerce. So, standard measures, logistics bureau, all of these. This will give you enough money once you get trade routes up and running to usually afford the band of mercs that sits in your capital. It costs 4.7 gold a month. You can usually get that in the first 8 or so innovations, assuming you also do the start I recommend, which is start with enticing business investments here before you take the innovations. It'll save you political power and gold. So you can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or you can skip this one and go here. Skip either one of these. But I do recommend you get both of these. At that point, you can keep going down here, and if you get all the way down here, you get 2 and population, and this is the end of it. You can also, there's other stuff on the tax side, but you won't have a lot of population to tax, and tax kind of sucks anyway. So if you do that, you'll be able to afford a merc band. If you can afford the mercenary band, at some point, this nation here, or whatever nation replaces them, Chios, Pontus, or whatever, will start attacking these 2 nations right here. I don't think it's hard-coded, but I've seen it happen every game I've done. They basically try to invade this area at some point, at which point, if you are lucky, you have an ally over here, or these guys are still alive. You raise your mercs, wait a handful of months to get their morale up, raise your levies, and attack, and just seize this land. Be aware that you do not want to, if you can help it, to seize this province here, Madra, especially if one of the successors, like Thrace, Seleucids, or Egypt, is right on your border here, because then they will want your land and they will tend to attack you. Whereas if you leave a one province nation between them, they won't have as much desire. They'll go after that one first, which gives you more time to try and find allies. Now, in the series I was doing, Rome somehow vassaled Thrace that owned this area here, so that was probably the end of that series. But I have only seen that happen 1 out of 8 or 9 games that I did. a good start on, and I was usually able to subdue this area within the starting ruler's lifetime. At which point you should manage to here we go, swap laws, and you can raise a legion. Still, a legion's not going to be the biggest force you have, so the other option is you just go to mercenary contract law and sit on that for some time. Keep your merc army raised. It's going to have more troops than you're going to get from a legion for some time. And using that, and then obviously if you grow in size, you'll be able to afford more mercs. If you can keep affording more mercs, you can keep expanding, conquering things, because you'll have the money to do so with commerce. Remember to turn on automatic trade. It will help you if for some reason a trade route falls out. It'll try and fill it again. Be aware it can get stuck sometimes, so sometimes you have to set up the trade routes yourself, because it will always go for strategic resources, and sometimes the strategic resources are not available. But at least they have a nice, easy way of moving between it now. This is a recent change. I do like it. Tells you what the income is, tells you how many routes you can pick from. It's very useful. In terms of religion, so now that we have officially taken our ruler, made her embrace her heritage, which flips us to Zoroastrian and flips us to Persian culture. Obviously, we have a slight problem. There's only 4 Zoroastrian population and virtually no Persian in our country. So we will try and correct that. This is where, if you wanted to, you could have gone down the conversion tree. But I really do recommend getting the improved relations. Getting a successor as an ally means you'll just use them to win all your wars and grow that way. It's, in my opinion, the easiest way to do it. Start going military once you get a legion, basically, or get a large amount of levies. But focus on oratory or civics at the beginning, and then probably start down religious. You could just go 4 here, or 5 here, because you want the Grand Theater, and then put the other 3 into religious, which would get you the Grand Temple for conversion. It's really up to you. It's very easy to get high research as this nation, just because of the way it starts out. Your Persian culture obviously is integrated, but your Pontic culture that you started with prior to flipping is integrated as well, which means you're going to get citizens of that culture, so you can get research for that. Let's see. Next thing is religion. So you're technically flipped to Zoroastrian, right? But you start out with all Greek deities from before. So I recommend you flip this one first. You want to change it to Zoroaster himself. The most important thing he has is every time you activate him, he not only has increased conversion speed, but he converts 5 pops to your religion automatically. With such a small nation, you can basically ensure you always have Zoroastrian religion, and then as you expand, the provincial loyalty becomes more useful. So I at least recommend you flip this one now, and then over time flip these other ones. Some of the Zoroastrian ones are really good. I like them. This one right here, commerce and build costs, great for building a tall nation. Lots of money discounts and income to help you build good cities. In terms of war, though, the starting one of Heracles is actually not a bad one to keep around for a while. None of the Zoroastrian ones you have available at the start really help. That one gives morale, but it's inactive, so it's up to you. Whereas Heracles gives you more unintegrated culture happiness, which will help. Be aware, though, if you keep him in your pantheon, it does slow down your conversion rate, but does not affect activating Zoroaster to convert land. Another thing to think of pretty early on is to turn your other province here into a city. You only need roughly 40 or so gold from their starting money to do so. I recommend you do this. From your imports, you should not have issues with food. You have a very low starting population. So then you can get 2 cities, and I recommend you build academies and fill up the academies. And if you really want to go all out for research, you put in more courts of law as well. If you want to convert, you go temple and then grand theater. Those are unlocked with the innovations. And then you'll have a Zoroaster Persian culture. It's not very hard. Let's see if I can load up one of my early games. Test games is these guys. I think this is the right one. It's going to be on a different version though, so be aware it will be slightly different. Oh, no, this was actually my series one. So as you can see, I've managed to expand here. I did it mostly on my own, but as time goes on, I'm having to try and get allies with people. Unfortunately, in this one, the Seleucids expanded, but Egypt did not. But I did get close enough to getting an alliance with Macedon that with a bit more improved relations and gifts, I could probably ally them. The issue with this one is Rome is already here, and it's pretty much killed the run. But unless Rome shows up, both the Seleucids and Egypt don't tend to conquer this area faster than you. You can easily pick off these small nations. As you can see here, Pontus was the victor. Another one to consider is Armenia. They don't tend to have really great allies, but they do have a fair amount of pops, troops, and they usually get larger than they are. They've been beat up by the Seleucids. Let's see. Anything else to go over with you? Obviously, the goal is to form Persia as these guys. It's quite difficult. You have to own quite a lot of land to do so. The way to do that, I recommend obviously using the bottom of the oratory tree, get the Imperial Challenge CB. It will allow you to take all the Seleucids in one war once you get strong enough. Another sneaky strategy is something I discovered in my Jerusalem game, or a Judea game, where you can bribe governors of on your borders. If their territory has less than 50 loyalty, you make them your friend, you get their loyalty below 40, you can entice them, they will defect to your side and hand over their province as well. This works really well in nations that are unlikely to actually be able to attack you. Like the Seleucids right now, I could probably poach this area right here, and their ability to attack me would probably be nothing. But if they do come for me, I'm dead anyway. This is where having an ally with another successor helps. If you're allied to somebody like Egypt or the Seleucids, you can pretty freely harass the other successors with that ability. Overall, it's a fun nation. It's a tough start. Like most small nations, you really have to rely on mercs and trade early. But then once you get going, conversion is going to be one of your biggest issues. As you can see, Zoroastrian is an emerging culture, emerging religion, and we've already started converting a good portion of the culture in this region to Persian. In terms of the traditions, before I forget, the Persian traditions, I like them mainly because of the rural tradition. First off, activating the first one will get you more Freeman pops of Persian heritage, but the second one will give you heavy cavalry offense and defense, which is useful if you want to have a pretty powerful small legion. A couple heavy cavalry will make a big difference. But the big one is the cavalry skirmish down here. You'll get 4 free innovations. It's very useful to finish off a goal in your innovations tree, like getting prescribed cannon here to get conversion laws. 4 gets you a long way into a tree. It's very strong early on. Other cool things about the tree is you can really some of their bonuses on this side, the Persian rural ones, you can get forts, levy multipliers. If you get further down here, you can get morale of armies and popularity gain, which will help with stability. If you get Levantine, you can also get manpower and monthly legitimacy, which is really cool. I don't know of any of the other trees that give these like really strong passive bonuses at the end, but it's really kind of cool. If you want to go into horse archers, which are really strong, the royal tradition is good for that. If you want to go into light infantry and war elephants, you can do it here. Some of these, like the attrition and combat bonuses, are really useful. If you go down here, you can get mercenary maintenance decreased, which is very useful for a nation that relies on mercs early, and you get a huge amount of population. So that's basically Heraclea Pontica in a nutshell. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you guys can complete the achievement to recreate Persia as them. The only requirement is you have to stay of this dynasty. So make sure you don't lose it. As you can see, our starting ruler is still alive. She lives for quite a while. She does have sons. You want to marry them off as soon as possible to get more heirs. I think that's it. Another alternate strategy, if you really want to, is try and cross the sea here and invade the Bosporus, the Crimea region. If you're having trouble expanding here, it's another expansion route that's possible. If you show up with an army of mercs, usually you can beat the nations there and establish a little kingdom up here if you're worried, and use those pops to get closer to a great power so you can get more legions and troops. Don't forget, integrating cultures is very useful. If they start to become a large portion of your population, like 20 or 30%, by all means stick them in there. Integrate them to citizens, not nobles. Leave your Persians the nobles. You should be pretty good. I think that's it. They don't have a lot of unique events, unfortunately, that I've found, other than some of their starting stuff. So, tricky nation, but fun nation. Hopefully you guys can do better than I did when I started my series. And I'll see you guys on another guide. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.